Our guest for this hour is Dr. Danvas Makori. He is a commissioner with the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, and this is the NCIC, the Hate Speech Commission. Anti-Hate Speech Commission. Okay, we don't call it Anti-Fire Brigade.
Call it Fire Brigade.
Yeah.
Like we don't talk about the anti-riot police. We call them riot police. Yes.
Yeah. We know what happened at the Eldred rally on Friday. Then we have seen, of course, action being taken with the arrest of the Senator for Meru, Mithika Linturi. There's another story in the paper, and this is about Isiolo. The National Cohesion and Integration Commission is set to question the county's Somali Council of Elders chairman, Sharif Abdullahi, over alleged inflammatory remarks against non-Muslims. According to a source, Abdullahi was earlier this week interrogated by Isiolo-based detectives for ethnic and religious profiling remarks that he made at a recent Borana Elders meeting in Garbatula. So this is not just at that level. It's at very many levels. As we head towards elections, we have very many of these things that we'll be discussing this morning. Dr. Makori, good morning.
Morning, Eric. Morning.
Good to have you on the show again.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to be here. Always a pleasure.
Okay.
Let me say hello, CT. Morning, CT.
Morning, brother.
Morning.
Good morning.
It's good to see you, and it's good to have you in the studio.
Thank you.
Again.
Yes. So, this year, your work gets a notch busier because of monitoring hate speech, and we've had this conversation before. What is hate speech? Okay, maybe we can just go back into what does the law define as hate speech or inflammatory utterances?
I think before we go to that definition, I think the Constitution is clear because the definition is set in the context of the Constitution. Article 4 talks about free speech. And we have a liberty in this country, of course, to say what we need to say, what we should say. That's why we are here. That's why you do what you do. Then it limits it. There's a limit to it. It's not carte blanche, okay? And it's very clear. And the three things are limited to it, okay? And it's incitement to violence, propaganda to war, and hate speech. It's very clear on that. So that's the basis of departure. So that you're free to say what you can say, unless you're doing this. Now, in our article of NCIC Act 2008, it defines what hate speech is. It's actually vilification, ethnic vilification of any ethnic here. Even in our new amendment, is any people group that you vilify, okay? An individual or people group that you vilify by words or utterances. So that's where it comes. It's basically the vilification of a people group. That's what our act defines as a hate speech. And it's very clear based on our act what it is. And sometimes for us, just before, because I know that's where we're gonna go in the next discussion. Prior to the act when it was in 2008, it did not encompass, for lack of a better word, it didn't encompass what we saw yesterday. And learning from Rwanda, we inserted another clause, an amendment, which includes even coded language. Because in Rwanda, it was cockroaches and trees.
Yes.
Trees. You talked about trees today, city today. Okay, it was trees. Tall trees need to be cut down.
Well, there you go.
See? So we've included that in coded language. If you use coded language to vilify a specific people group, that is still hate speech. Because you can get it or you can only justify where I meant trees. No, you meant this.
Yes.
But now we'll use that.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's clear in terms of what it means.
Yes.
And what you cannot say. And then just as you're saying now, along lines, you realize that certain things then were not included in definitions or descriptions. And so then you came in and then had added clauses.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So it's clear in terms of what you cannot say.
Absolutely.
In public or otherwise.
Yeah.
Is it just as clear then what happens to you should you then engage in this kind of practice?
Oh, yes, it is. Our act says that if you are convicted, go through the court process, due process is done, you're convicted. There is 5 years, a minimum of 1 million you ought to pay. So it's very clear if you engage in hate speech, but I think first of all, in our act is very clear in terms of the punishment that you incur. So it's actually clear. I think towards the last part of our act, it lists down everything that you incur when you engage in hate speech or incitement. It's actually very clear.
Okay. One of the sticky things, though, however, is that it's, I think along the lines in courts, we've heard that it's very difficult to prove or disprove intent, right? And this is what you're saying, that if you are then convicted, this and this may happen. These are the penalties that you ought to pay, or the time that you will now spend, as a guest of the state, etc. Okay? But now, we've had, and this has been said over and over and over again, Rwanda was an extreme, representation of the fact that you said something, and as a result of you saying something, somebody else then picked up with requisite action, right? Or following action. Now, before that action or any kind of danger can take place and then come into place, somebody then is able to rebuttal and say really quickly, well, that's not what I meant. This is actually what I meant. But unfortunately, the seed has already been planted in the minds of many people. Even though they don't take any action, the seed is resident in their minds. And this, I think, is that place where we are dangerously playing right now. That anybody can say what it is that they want and then quickly pull back on it and say, actually, you know what? That is not what I meant. How do we deal with this very difficult situation?
Actually, that's very true. We sat down with a number of experts, especially on this matter, lawyers, that is, and on the issue of incitement. Because even in our country, proving incitement is extremely difficult. Threshold is quite high. Now, we had to have a global look at this and say, okay, where can we look at? Where can we learn from and implement this? Now, one of the courts in Canada really defined, and we got that definition now and borrowed it, what incitement is. And to paraphrase it, and to give an example, actually, the best example is this. If I say, Eric, CT yesterday said X, Y, and Z about you, gossiping about you, and this is what he said, and he doesn't like you, he's not your friend, and as a matter of fact, he did X, Y, and Z.
He's planning to kill you.
Yes. Now, Eric gets all angry, upset, goes and punches CT.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, that is a classic definition of incitement. Incitement is defined as when words that are spoken elicit a direct response consequent of those words. So it can be proven. If I did not say that, you didn't have punched CT.
Right.
You understand? So I cannot pull back and say, well, my intention was not for Eric to punch CT. Eric just went and punched CT's own volition.
I was just alerting him.
Yeah.
To watch his back.
It is what I said that caused him to go and punch what? CT.
Yeah.
So because of that, that's what we adopted. Now, to take it a step further, we, even in our country, we had a meeting not so long ago with the Chief Justice and her team. And in the next, I think 1 month, actually, about 2 months now, we'll gazette, the judiciary will gazette 5 courts, specifically to cater and handle hate speech. Because realize also even, and we're also working with there's a multi-agency we've set up with the DPP, because even in the prosecution part, for them to understand really our act and these things that what you raise, which is pertinent, and the judges to understand that this is very different, because it can be very ambiguous, because they use the same principle on a criminal code, especially on matters of hate speech, and the threshold is quite high. So we're coming together and say, guys, this is very different, because then you can hide, you can deny words. You can say, well, I didn't mean it, I didn't see it. So because of that, the judiciary is placing 5 courts, in Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Eldoret, and Nakuru. They'll be gazetted soon to specifically handle hate speech. Number 1, they'll be specialized in what you said right now. Number 2, to fast track these cases, because the challenge we have is the process, the criminal process is about 5 years by the time a case is had in determined. So that within 6 months, we are trying to negotiate with them 6 months. A case like this is had and determined, so that these individuals are barred from ever running for office again.
There's a narrative that took root in this country, and it morphed into, or it got manifested in very many ways. And a lot of it began in the Moi era. It began with what were referred to as tribal clashes. Communities that had lived side by side for the longest time had issues every once in a while, problems here and there, but the tempo was never raised to the point where people were actually killing each other. And people gave explanations for it. But if you look at the conversations that took place that brought that about, was you would find specific communities being pointed to and being labeled as the cause of the problems that the other communities had, especially the community among whom they were living. This was prevalent in the Rift Valley. The problems that we saw at the coast that brought about the Kayabombo and that later brought Pwani, Kenya, same story. The narrative that you have a problem and the problem is this group of people who are responsible for it. And then with the dog whistle communication, it gets subterranean and then it becomes an issue of this is ours because it's in our geographical area. We saw it playing out at Moi University. It is our university. It's not a national university. And so our person must be employed because this is our university. Now, we want to deal with these issues when they're fully blown, when someone like the Senator for Meru utters what he has uttered, knowing full well what it means. No excuse. You can dance around it as much as you like. This is a seasoned politician. This is an educated man. He knows and understands exactly what he was saying. It's the consequences that are now hitting him, so he's retracting and finding colorful language to explain it. He knows what he's saying. How do you deal with an issue whose genesis is not difficult to understand, whose consequences are obvious, and throughout the year we see it building up?
Yep.
In small little matters, I don't see your commission clamping on it. I don't see you jumping feet first and saying, excuse me,
This can't be out.
this is what leads to this, and we are not going to allow this to happen. We wait until one clan has gone and killed 10 people, the other one has retaliated and killed 12 people,
And call a peace meeting.
then. And yet, we know
You saw
exactly.
you heard the rumblings. before the
Yes,
storm.
yes. I'm not going to go to the extent of saying you even know the perpetrators. No. But you do.
So you're saying NCIC is too slow to act?
I'm saying NCIC is toothless.
City.
Yes.
City is a very extremely smart fellow, and I hear you. Now, let me say this. To answer you extensively, Eric, permit me to answer this extensively because this is, we're always accused of that, and I'm
Yes.
glad you brought it up. So you permit me, oblige me, just for a few minutes to extensively respond to that.
Okay.
Okay. In this sense, in 2019 December, we launched what we call a roadmap to peaceful election bill and normal. Okay. We launched it. It's a roadmap. I won't call it an invention. It's a roadmap, and after studying extensively, because that's part of our mandate, what causes violence, electoral violence in this case, there are 6 factors, and I'll just name the first 3 to respond to you. Okay, and in conversation we're having, number 1 is lack of trust. Okay, lack of trust between communities, between state and communities. That is the number 1. People just don't trust the government. People don't trust government institutions like us, that you said. Okay, and we did a cohesion index, and I'd like you to actually look at that cohesion index. You're a researcher. It was well researched document, brilliant document. I think it was the first one in Africa, cohesion index, to look at the cohesion state in our country, and there is an extreme high level of lack of trust between communities, as you said. Okay, and between state and the people. Root cause number 1. Talk about root causes because he's talking about root causes and our intervention for that. Number 2 was a subculture of violence, whereas for a long time, opposition, either individually or collectively, is expressed in violence. Okay, rather than me saying, okay, I don't like this, or arguing my case, the best way to express dissent, for that better word, is through what? Violence. Dissent is expressed through violence for a long time. Number 3, okay, is selfish politicians. Okay.
Is there another kind?
Well, they're not altruistic, all of them, but not all politicians are selfish. Vis-a-vis selfish here, vis-a-vis self-interest versus national interest. Okay. Let me define that. Thank you, Siti, for bringing that. Defining selfish politician is one who places self-interest in front of what? Above of
national
Community and
national interest. Okay. And the fourth one, for lack of time, is ethnicity, negative ethnicity, or ethnic politicization, balkanization. Now, it's an extension of what we say. So they use all these elements to ethnicize our politics. Politics is mobilized through, for the longest time. Actually, this is the first time we're seeing in our country where the mobilization of politics isn't so much ethnic. Now it's issue based. It's other issues apart from the previous what we were saying, and I think it's a good thing to an extent. Now, to answer you, let me also school you just in a couple of things. We have 17 mandates in our act according to the law. Okay, one of them is just hate speech. Out of 17, it's hate speech. Okay, now you see what I just listed, all of them. Now we've spent a lot of time in Rift Valley when we first assumed office 2 years ago. We had a strategy. I advise my colleagues of a strategy. I call it the Samson strategy. Okay, Samson realized he has limited resource. His last act, he has limited resource. Okay, so he talks to this young boy, says, you know what, take me to the two pillars that hold this temple. Okay, the Samson strategy. Realized he can't do all this, so he went to the two pillars.
See.
Yes, couldn't see, number one. Number two, given what he had facing, he had to be very focused. So he went to the two pillars of the temple, and we know what happened. He pushed the pillars, the whole thing collapsed. On the Philistines, 3,000 people died. And to us, and to me, to the two pillars that hold this country together when it comes to election violence is Nakuru and Uasin Gishu. If those two counties hold together, the country will hold together. If they don't hold together, this country ain't gonna hold together from a election violence perspective. So if we said we'll focus our resources on that, and we spend a lot of time in these two counties, in Joro, in Moro, in Eldoret. I've been there so many times. I'm about to get a house there in Eldoret.
That's right.
Yeah, that's how much time we spend there to build resilience. You understand? Because based on the challenges we had that caused violence, we had strategic interventions and transformative actions, so that when people like Senator Muthui says what he says, is resilience within the community, so that they don't act or do or incited and follow up action on what they do.
Why are these two places? What's unique about them?
What's unique about them?
Nakuru and Uasin Gishu.
Well, Nakuru, we know it's a metro area, but where a lot of communities have come together. Traditionally, it wasn't that so, but many communities have come upon there, especially of the Kikuyu community. The same thing in Eldoret. It was predominantly for the longest time our Kalenjin area, and then many communities have come together because it's one of the metro areas, of course, we have in our country. Land, also, is a big aspect towards it.
Okay.
Yes.
So, after spending all the time
Yes.
there and looking at these are the two pillars.
Yes.
We make sure that we reinforce these two pillars so nobody comes to shake this building and bring it down.
Yeah.
We still see incidences of hate speech coming from leaders from that region. This is not a leader from the region. This is a leader who came from a different region and went and made these statements in that region. We have seen accusations and counter-accusations. Even now, somebody is posting Boit Barsite saying there's a former Molo MP who has uttered inflammatory remarks.
Yes.
Just recently. This is in the region. And we don't see any kind of action. We don't see sufficient teeth biting such leaders. So what work have you been doing after all has been said and done?
That's what I was saying. Given the four challenges I've listed, given our mandate, first of all, is to understand that it's easy to respond. What if there's the enforcement aspect of it, yes, but that's reaction, okay? And let's say we just arrested, Muthui was arrested yesterday, okay?
Yep.
But the damage is already done. The words are already gone out of his mouth,
Yep.
okay? And if you don't have mechanisms to be able to withstand that and hold that, then no matter how much you enforce, okay, it will still not make a difference, because people can be incited, people will cause violence, people will destroy property, people will kill each other. I saw a clip yesterday, and we have to verify from a legal perspective of an aspirant saying when he came back to his house was burnt down. I saw that clip. Actually, it was one of the major media houses actually circulating that clip. So we authenticate that clip. That clip. Sorry. So now, you see, for us, the intervention is very important, so that if the community is resilient, if you build people to an extent where they will be, people are empowered, educated enough, if they're civic educated enough, no matter who says what, okay, they will not respond, no react to that. Now we can now focus on that. Now, in the issue of enforcement, that is exactly why we had to set up a multi-agency task force. Is because the process of if CT today is inside, I start investigation, I take the file to the DPP. The DPP says, well,
nothing's strong.
This is not strong enough. Go back again, do more investigation. We get more evidence. Back to the back and forth. Sometimes I can tell you, we have files that take sometimes even a year. The back and forth. So we said this is ridiculous. We can't. And it's not that they're doing their job, but also there's so many files they have to handle too. So by the time you give them, there's a backlog before they get to your file. The same thing with judiciary. By the time you take a case, there's a backlog. Like his case his case is being handled today. I can tell you for a fact there's so many cases ahead of him. By the time it's determined, that's going to take 5 years. So we said we can't afford that. So rather than whine and complain, we said let's come together. How can we have a strategic intervention so that we can resolve this issue? So we have a special team, the DCI, the ACC, the judiciary, the DPP, so that now the enforcement mechanism is strong enough, quick enough, efficient enough, so that it's a deterrent for politicians not to do that again.
We are talking about curbing hate speech in this election year, and with us in the studio is the Commissioner with the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, Dr. Danvas Makori. CT was just about to ask you a question.
You see, if we do not speak truth to the situation that we find ourselves in, it doesn't matter what high-fangled, multicolored, kaleidoscopic solution we come up with, it will bear no fruit. The narrative that we are talking about and why it's raising such a heated discussion is because it is an anti-Kikuyu narrative. Other communities that live in the Rift Valley now become collateral damage. Whether you are Luhya, you are Kisii, you are Luo, collateral. Now, it is a narrative that has been encouraged. It has a narrative that politicians have benefited from. It's a narrative that has acquired dog whistle status, so you don't hear it being spoken out in the open, but it's always there. Now, if we don't address it and call it what it is and call it by name, then we will not be able to deal with it. We saw the same problem in Masai land. What we are hearing coming out of Isiolo and coming out of these places, it's not any different. You profile a community and you decide. And so the conversation that now takes place is anti this particular community. From 1992, 1997, until the entire situation exploded in 2007, 2008, that conversation had been taking place. And politicians had been fanning it and fanning it and fanning it and fanning it. We have an election now. And someone from the Rift Valley wants to be president. That thing is being fanned more than it has ever been fanned before.
I think so.
I know so. So, when we talk about solutions, what you've suggested are excellent. But this isn't one of those situations where we pussyfoot and we sort of like tread gently. No. When you have ample evidence to take someone to court, man, the book should be thrown at these people as much as you possibly can, because a repeat of 2007, 2008 is imminent. It's not something that is far-flung and it's far away. No, it is not. It is not. Talk to people who live on the borders and ask them what is happening, and they will tell you. The hostilities never really end. They just sort of like go down, waiting to rear their heads again. Yes. And all they require are political statements such as the one that Linturi made. But Linturi, unfortunately, is going to bear the brunt for things that other people have been doing quietly before he made his utterances. Is the NCIC going to face this thing head on, call it what it is, and deal with it exactly for what it is?
As a joinder to that, Doc, does the NCIC have the capacity to deal with the potential dangers that we're talking about? Because if we're going to be sober-minded and call it for what it is, we're going to call it for what it is, we're staring danger in the face. We are staring it in the face, and it's very possible for these things to happen, just like CT has said. Just because somebody has said it out in the open now, it makes it a little bit more real of what the situation on the ground is. Because if it takes the utterances of somebody to spark something like this, what do you think they've been thinking and considering all this time? So, do you as a commission have the capacity to deal with the potential danger that we are looking at here, beside, warning?
I think this show should be called the Truth Commission. Because we're about to speak the truth. So this is the Truth Commission. Okay? And I'm going to be very truthful to respond to those answers and very truthful. CT, let me just be very frank here. This nation has never healed genuinely from the 2000-2008 violence. We've never had a healing process. We've swept it under the rug and covered it and kept quiet about it and assumed everything is fine. We've never gone through a reconciliation and a healing process as a country. Genuine reconciliation. We've not done that. And that always has serious consequences later. It's a wound that is there, but it's not there. It's festering under, but you've covered it. One day, one time, it will blow up until we have a genuine reconciliation. That's the truth. This nation has we never had that conversation you're talking about and talk about these issues face to face. Now, I'll pivot to a question so that I can come back to the response. Do we have the capacity? We are building capacity. I'm going to give you status as it is. I think the only commission does not have regional offices. Our headquarters is right here in Nairobi, Britain Towers, Upper Hill. And understanding and appreciating the challenge we're facing as a country, we purposed to make sure before the elections start that we have regional offices and we have boots on the ground. Boots here, to be precise, so that I'm not accused of anything again, is peacemakers, people on the ground. Okay? Because we parachute, whenever there's a conflict, there's a flare up, we parachute.
Yeah.
Okay? The issue with Capedo, we are.
And then you leave.
And then we leave. And you cannot sustain it. That's not sustainable. So, then that's been the challenge of the past.
So what do you need in order for you to have
money.
regional offices?
Money. It's money. And in the current financial year, this budget, we submitted the request and the requirements. And we need at least minimum 10 regional offices. I would say 8, minimum 10, based on the previous provinces. Rift Valley divided into 2 because of its vast and unique challenges Rift Valley has. North and South Rift. Okay? The first offices...
Did you get the budgetary allocation in this financial year?
No.
So you're not in the process of...
We are in the process because now...
we don't have money.
Did you get more than you got last year?
Slightly more. But that was for us a specific task in terms of recruiting monitors on the ground. So it is a 1-year thing just to do. But we, in the supplementary budget, it's coming. So not the full amount we requested, but just for a few. So the first regional office is going to be in Isiolo and Nakuru. You've mentioned Isiolo. Isiolo is the real powder keg. Actually, that's a real concern. Not even Nakuru. I'm not even worried about Rift Valley. I'm worried about Isiolo. And, of course, Nakuru, because of the issues that I talked about, the 2-pillar strategy we had. And North Rift in Kitale, near Eldoret. So Eldoret will be flanked and pieced. And to add capacity. So that now, these things that you're talking about, there's a continual presence on the ground. That has not been the case in the past. And being very truthful here, has not been the case in the past. Okay? We're recruiting more people. Part of the budget actually is to hire more people. We're very limited staff tracking of people. We only have like 60 people in the whole place. We're supposed to be, if you look at our staffing needs, it's supposed to be 3 times 180 people. So part of that, we submitted that so that we can have genuine capacity, presence on the ground. So that now when we start that conversation of, because for you cannot start something you cannot finish. It's dangerous. You rather not start it.
Right.
You understand, City? You rather not start it, because if we can start something, do we have what it takes to finish? We realize we don't. So let's build capacity so that when we can have that conversation, we have the capacity and means to have that honest conversation.
Apart from everything else that, at the commission that you've been doing, is there political goodwill? Have you gone to the political leadership of the country and said, you know what, people, we have never resolved the issues of 2008 post-election violence. We've never really had that moment where we breathe, where we speak, and we need to have that. And they sat back and said, you have a point. Do you have the goodwill to start that conversation?
So otherwise known as
without the political goodwill, is that conversation really likely to happen?
There's goodwill. There's intent to, how to put it? It's theoretical. It's on paper. Yeah, it's a good thing.
It's a good thing. I mean, we
It's
have
a
it on
good thing.
record.
We look at it. Yeah, but will goes beyond intent to action.
Yep.
You understand? So will comprehensively is you intending and doing something. And the intention now is what usually lacks, because it is a very painful conversation, City. It is extremely painful. So that, because as we know, the actors, perpetrators are the politicians for the most part.
Yep.
Not always. They're good. They are the perpetrators. So are they willing to have that discussion? No, they won't, because they know they're
exposing
perpetrators.
themselves.
Yes.
Okay. So even if talking about political goodwill, is there enough of a presence of mind with all these things that you're saying you're putting in place? Maybe the communication has not been public because, it's nice to hear that the NCIC is doing all of these things, building capacity here and there. Communication could be public, because then if it is out in the open that people know that this is what is happening, science might tell you that the chances of people then reducing then on their action would is quite high. All right. But in terms of those who would be perpetrators, do you feel that there is a presence of mind that they would be careful about what they would say because they know that the commission is on ground doing their work? I'll give you an example. If you went into Kigali today, it's almost palpable that people know, you know what, we're not even going to meet in groups and have these political discussions, because they are aware of what happened 28 years ago, one, but they also know that there will be consequences if you engage in this behavior. I don't think you can say that can be mirrored here, because there are commissions there that exist. There are people who are watching. There are people who are... Many say that they've not really healed from it because they're still walking on eggshells. They don't want it to happen again. Can you say that the same thing happens here? That people know that there's a commission, that people know that there are things being done, there's political will, and because of that, they therefore will not behave in this manner. I know what I think, but what do you think from a commission point of view, where you're doing all this work, but do you feel it? Do you as a commission feel that people are taking you seriously and are not going to engage because they can see the work that you're doing?
You know what? Let me just also... Again, this is the Truth Commission. You guys are the Truth Commission. let me also be truthful. And I'm not defending politicians, so let me put a disclaimer to what I'm about to say. I'm not defending them. But Eric, to be very frank and practical, and the real thing, it's just a few of the politicians that incite and are warmongers and are warlords. Okay, a good majority of them actually are peace-loving and really want. For a good majority. See, hold on.
I actually agree with you.
Yeah.
I actually agree with you. But in these matters, if they don't speak out against what is wrong,
Yeah.
They're complicit in it.
Yeah, and
Yes.
it only takes
Opposite.
one. It only takes one bad apple to spoil the bunch, doesn't it?
Right.
The rest of the apples are pretty good, shiny things.
No, very true.
Yeah.
And in places where there are clear fault lines, especially in pastoralist communities, okay, where it's like a good example is Isiolo or Samburu, where you have two communities living side by side, the Turkanas and Samburus. Isiolo, where the 5 major pastoralists live together. In North Rift, in Suguta Valley, where you have the Pokot, the Marakwet, and Turkanas live together. What you see is now I'm saying it's few politicians is in these regions, is those local politicians exploiting those fault lines, balkanizing these communities, so that they can mobilize, because some of these constituencies, how they traverse many communities, so they want guys pushed out, their guys in, so they can get more votes. Okay, now and that's exactly what they do, and especially in these pastoral communities, especially where you don't have, you Eric have a fixed address. Okay, today this is the address, tomorrow they have moved to another, whole community has moved. So it works for these politicians to incite so that you guys kick these guys out. Now, on that part, are we like Rwanda? No, we're not. In the sense that in the national level, but I can tell you in the local level. Okay, that's why I said that example. If you go to these communities where there's serious issues, there's Samburu, in this case Baragoi. If you go to Isiolo, if you go to the capital, Baringo, those politicians. Yes, they know what we can do, and there's a respect and a deterrence to it. There's a, I won't say fear, there's a respect, because they know we've been hard on them. We don't announce everything. What Linturi said is a national news, okay? Because it is a big rally and the whole nation was watching.
And it was live.
And it was live. But I can tell you in the Kapedos, in Lomelu, in Milingot, in Marti, where the MCA or the MP, where there's no national coverage, where they're inciting, like that's the reason I'm glad you cited that fella in Isiolo, because it's not national news, it wasn't. But we were monitoring, we know exactly, we have people on the ground to an extent in these sensitive areas, so we know what they're saying. And in this case, I can tell you for a fact, they don't play that much because they know what we've done. So we don't announce also, we don't, Linturi being arrested was national news. When you arrest these guys, it's not national news. They're arrested, they're processed, and we have almost 400 cases, 450 cases right now pending in court in such areas. So hopefully we can get there. On the local, to answer your question, on the local level, yes, there's that respect and deterrence. In the national level, not so much, because I don't think we pronounce everything we do out in the national.
So you're not going for the big fish. In other words, at national level, you're talking about big fish. At national level, for example, look at what has happened with the Linturi issue. It has taken that direct split between those who are on the Azimio side and those who are on the UDA side. So every person on the UDA side will come out and say, but this is not what Linturi was talking about, but this is, Linturi was taken out of context. Every other person on this other side is saying, no, Linturi should be arrested, Linturi should be charged, forgetting that some of those who are shouting loudest also have pending issues.
True.
Or have also been cited before, will also be quoted by others who say, Buana, you are talking like this, and during a BBI rally in Narok, you stood up and said this kind of things. So at the national level, you seem to be, also playing that dance of, okay, these are national leaders, they command a lot of respect. Is that what NCIC is doing?
No. You see, perception and reality are two different things, okay? That's a perception, and we're always accused of that, depending on what side it is, okay? But what is the reality? If you look at the people, the cases we have, especially the big cases we have, I don't think for us there's a big fish, small fish. If you do something that threatens cohesion and peace in the country, we'll come after you, okay? Now, here's the challenge we have, and we're accused of that, especially after this Linturi issue. People say, well, you guys are taking sides. So-and-so said, we started seeing clips were sent to us. I'm like, okay, hold on. Why did you send this clip that day, that time to say that? Because, of course, we can't be, back to what your question,
It's your job.
we can't be everywhere at the same time, okay? We're not omnipresent in human capacity, okay? So there are certain things we can monitor. We can be every single corner of this country at all times. So when somebody in a nondescript place says something stupid, a very little, and then it's recorded on phone. And then 3 years later, it's circulated because somebody else say that. To me, it's ridiculous. Now, what they said is wrong. It's still wrong. But let me say this first of all on that issue before I respond to it. You cannot justify an evil by pointing out to another evil.
Two wrongs don't make a right.
They don't. Yeah. So you saying, well, so and so said it, so it's okay for you to say it. No. You can't.
Yeah.
You cannot justify an evil for an evil. Now, to the point, what you're saying is our process, and even an act, is very clear. If you have a complaint, first of all, any Kenyan can come to NCIC and lodge a complaint, and by law, we are mandated and obliged to respond and investigate. True or false, we have to respond to it. So they never came and say, you know what? There's 2 ways we can do investigation. On our own accord, we can initiate it. If we see a problem like we saw, we have monitors. Say, you know what? We need to investigate it. We need to summon these guys. Like you said it in Isiolo. We did it. Or somebody can say, and then you can come and say, you know what? Latif yesterday was in this meeting and was inciting people. Okay? We'll take your statement and start investigation. Now, if those guys who are saying we're parties and if they've never come to us and say, you know what, so and so said this yesterday, go and investigate it. No. Now, although there are people in Azimio who still believe in me, we have cases against them who we've taken to court, and they're prominent, they're big fish as you call them in court, and we'll continue to it. And let me finish by saying this, and I'm going to be very clear, and this is a warning to the politicians who are listening, and made me very clear. What Senator Lintuli said was unfortunate. What is worse is when other politicians take it and for political expediency, take mileage on it and use it over and over and over and repeat it over. So also we target them because they're not helping either. Okay, we need to move forward from that. Okay, he's being processed. He's apologized. I'm glad he apologized. Even for the first time, actually, there's a genuine apology. And I'm glad actually he did it in his own volition before we made him apologize. Okay? But any politician, especially on this other side, who think they can use that for mileage and repeat over and exploit it, also, to me, is even worse because this is intent. Because in criminal law, like in murder, there is first degree where there is you plan and meditate. And it's manslaughter where it just happened. Okay? Those now who go beyond this is intent, this is first degree. And will be hard on them even more than this.
Respond to some of these comments. And this is all talking about public trust on the NCIC. Boyd Barsitei says, NCIC is biased. They're biased themselves. The evidence is too glaring. Collins Kimtai Kipsat says, I believe NCIC is not an independent body. It's directed on what to do. It's a toothless dog that never bites. It's a useless commission. It must be disbanded. Bernard Kipkorir, useless commission, bias and state weapon against the weak people. How many leaders on the other side of the political wing have been quoted making reckless statements and commission is keeping silence?
Let me first respond by this. When there is this logic, CT, actually, because you're the one who does traffic here, when there's a plethora of incidents in the roads and more accidents, does it mean you disband the police or NTSA or you bring more police?
You ban cars.
You strengthen the institution.
Strengthen the institution.
Okay.
Now, that is a perception, it's an accusation, but there's no evidence. There's no one time we receive orders from above. We do what we need to do independently. We're an independent commission, okay? Policy, it comes to especially operational. We have operational. I can tell you for a fact, there's no one time I've received a call, say, hey, we need to do this. We act. If there's an issue, they need to give us evidence of those people they are saying when they have incited, and we will respond.
So you do the job yourselves.
Yes.
You are not directed by any other agency.
No, we've never been directed by any agency.
Okay.
Yes.
Enough said. Dr. Danvas Makori, Commissioner with NCIC, thank you very much for joining us. You have a lot of work this year, and we hope to see you again as we see the evidence of the work that you're doing. Asante sana.
Thank you guys. Always a pleasure, and you guys are doing a fantastic job. What you do actually makes a big difference. Just to let you know.
Kabisa.
Keep it up.
Thank you,
Asante sana.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.